Welcome to Stars Matter, a recruiting podcast from The Athletic. I'm Mitch Light, joined by Ari Wasserman, a national college football reporter. Ari had an epiphany last week. I'm going to call it an epiphany. You were visiting with Brent Venables at the University of Oklahoma. We will get into that in a little bit. But Ari, how you doing today, bud?
Yeah, I don't know if it was an epiphany, but we will get into it.
Okay, good. And also joined by Manny Navarro, covers Miami and recruiting for us. After we record today, Manny is going to be heading to nearby Chaminade High School in South Florida for a scrimmage. Ordinarily, that's not really a big deal, but when you've got so many elite players at a single high school, including the number 2 player nationally, I believe, in Jeremiah Smith. So Manny's going to have something on that on The Athletic later this week, and we can touch on it, what he saw in next week's show. Manny, how you doing? Hope you're staying dry. Evidently, you're reporting that it's raining outside in Miami.
Yeah, unfortunately, some bad storms here in South Florida. I'm curious to see if Dylan Raiola made it down to Chaminade to see if he can recruit Jeremiah Smith with him to Georgia. See if he's pursuing him all the way here where he plays.
All right, we'll get into that as well. And we are not joined by Grace Rayner. Grace is taking a vacation. She is in Italy. She's eating very well. She sent pictures of dinner. Quite jealous. Looked very good. So it'll be just us three.
Was it pasta or pizza?
Yeah, it's pasta, which I couldn't eat anyway, but it looked good. So there's 2 different things of pasta.
Yeah, I got to say, if you've got a gluten problem, Italy's got to be not that appealing.
Well, evidently, people have said that it's very gluten-free friendly because it's more prevalent over there, and so there's more options. But obviously, the pasta is the big thing that I wouldn't be able to eat. So, well, it looked tasty. So, planning going to Spain next summer. So we'll figure out some places to eat in Europe. But we are back this week. Sorry we missed the show last week. We planned to record in Chicago, but kind of couldn't get our schedules aligned. We were all in there for our college football summit. Had a good time. While we were gone, actually, Ari and I were on a plane. I don't know about you, Manny, but while we were on the plane, the number 1 player in the class of 2024 committed, but he was just one of many quarterbacks who pledged last week. We're going to get into that. I kind of update the quarterback situation. We're going to look, is it time to panic for a few programs off to slow starts? It's still early, but it's recruiting, so you can always panic. We'll discuss that, and we have some mailbag questions and some trivia, guys. But I think first we have to hit on Dylan Raiola. I don't think anybody was surprised that he committed to Georgia. It kind of leaked out, or shouldn't ever be surprised when the number 1 player commits to Georgia, but it was a foregone conclusion, and he kind of did it on his own time, and he picked last week. Ari, I'll start with you. You wrote a good column on it, and it's great for Georgia. Just your point is just kind of a bummer for college football, right?
Yeah, it's so funny because I'm like, people think, or I guess I kind of am biased to the teams that have the most stars on them. Like I'm always constantly trying to be the person that helps people see the forest from the trees when it comes to, matchups between teams that are built a certain way and teams that aren't. And I think that people thought or think that means that I'm just like a homer for the loaded teams. And the fact is that I do kind of wish that going into a college football season, it would be harder than picking one of 5 schools to win the national championship before the season starts and being right 99% of the time in the current setup. So, I just think that where he didn't go was more interesting than where he went, right? Like, I mean, everybody's talking about, the Georgia connection and how the rich get richer, and that's true, but it's just like, if Nebraska, the team that had where his dad was an All-American and his uncle's on the current staff, a team that he has visited 6 times in the past 2 years, one that has a new coach that's got a ton to, be excited about, or, like all the things that are at play there with Matt Rule, can't get this recruitment done to go to a school that hasn't had a first-round draft pick since I was in high school. Like, that is a tough look for college football, right? Like, what is Nebraska supposed to do? What are teams like Nebraska supposed to do if you can't land this player? Like, just bow down and just accept that you're going to get beaten by Georgia and Alabama at every turn? Like, is that where we're at right now?
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you for a second. What if, whether or not Scott Frost, let's say Nebraska was a 8-10 win team. They hadn't really broken through, but under Scott Frost, they were flirting in the Big Ten West. You think it was just it was too big of a leap for? I mean, we don't know this obviously, but you think it was too big of a leap on for Raiola, or do you think it was just a convenient excuse and he just wanted to go to Georgia anyway?
Well, I mean, It's not like he committed to, Caltech first. I mean, he committed to Ohio State first.
Right. True.
I think it's pretty clear where he wanted, like the type of place he wanted to go. And it kind of goes back to the same debate that you and I have on the show once every quarter, which is, do you go to the place that, has the most resources and the highest paid coaching staff with the,
right. Because he
track
wouldn't
record
get
of winning?
coached at Nebraska and he would have terrible facilities. You're right.
Well, then why didn't he go there? Like,
Because he wants to win
You're
more.
like jabbing at me
Because he
like
wants to win more.
I'm an idiot or something.
No,
as if
not
like,
at all.
okay, but like if you think it's the same, let
I
me
think
tell
it's
you, the
'cause he
number one
wants to
player in the
win.
country didn't think that. So, it's not the same. I don't think that. I'm sure Nebraska has wonderful facilities. I've walked by it. They're,
Right.
recently renovated. Matt Rule has turned around 2 college programs, but there is nothing that you can say to me on the show, and there's nothing that obviously could have been said to Dylan Raiola to make it seem like it's a tit for tat between those 2 places, because it's not.
I just think he wanted to win more. So, okay, Manny, what scorching hot take do you have on the number 1 player in the country going to the 2-time defending national champ?
Was I just said scorching hot?
No, not at all.
You're the one with the scorching hot take, not me.
It was a. I was trying to make a transition because Manny's just been sitting there for 5 minutes staring at us.
Okay, sorry. I just you're the one with the hot take.
I would have said scorching hot take. It was kind of a joke because there really isn't that big of a hot take to be had when the number 1 player goes to the 2-time defending national champions.
Thinking that Nebraska is like even in the same stratosphere as Georgia's the hot take.
No, I have no hot take. I agree with Ari. It's kind of depressing, right? Because that was sort of their one home field advantage. Mitch was the
I agree. Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. But I almost feel like, man, I wish I would have done a bunch of research to see the last time a 5-star recruit went to a program that honestly didn't deserve him, right? That it had
Sam Heward.
I mean.
But
it had 6 losing seasons in a row like Nebraska has. I mean, I get it. They have a new coach and they're trying to rebuild, but it's so tough to ask a kid like that to make a concession for his career, even if he's got an uncle on the coaching staff.
But don't you think the concession's
don't agree
more about
with this,
winning?
Mitch, because that's exactly
no,
my
I
thing.
think the concession's more about wanting to win at an elite level than it is being developed and going to the NFL.
Yeah,
but, hey, disagree.
It's 100% about that for him, right? He wants to go play with the best players. He wants to win championships. But I just think this idea that maybe we once had of college football recruits wanting to stay home, that's dissipated a while ago, right? Like all of these kids are national recruits now, and I think the story is when they actually do decide to stay home, right? Like that's the unbelievable moment now. It's not that kids are thinking of themselves first. I think that's fine. I think but the story would be, the exception would be Dylan Raiola going to Nebraska and saying family's more important to me. And I mean,
actually, Manny, it's like funny that you said that because you're right. Like a program or a player going to a place that isn't necessarily known as a winner is the atypical thing now. But it's like you could almost make the case that Arch Manning choosing Texas last year was, if you just use the sentence, the school who got a player like that who didn't deserve it. Like Texas didn't have 6 losing seasons in a row, but did Texas deserve Arch Manning?
That's a good point.
Did it happen last year?
It's fair. It's a fair point. But I also think, you're talking about a program that is in a much better place than Nebraska is, I think. They're going into the SEC. They've recruited well. They've had really good. Nebraska hasn't had a good recruiting class. I mean, when was the last time they had a top 10 recruiting class? Mitch?
They've had consistent top 25, but
I mean, I don't think that your children were born the last time Texas won the Big 12, Manny.
They might not have been.
I don't know what the year is, but if 247's rankings weren't all messed up, I would be able to make a point here. But I was like just trying to go to like a random class in 2015 just to see where the top quarterbacks went, and it won't load. So I don't know what's going on there. The historical data on this website is just severed.
That is a good point, because we've talked about, like Ari mentioned, Sam Heward and Washington. There's a connection there. In Washington, obviously, they've been in the playoff and all that. I would like to look up amount of 5-stars that have gone to a program, like let's just arbitrarily say it had two losing seasons in the previous 3 or whatever number you want to come up with.
The number 1 quarterback in the 2015 draft or 2015 recruiting rankings was Jarrett Stidham. You guys remember where he went?
Baylor and then Auburn.
Mm-hmm. Baylor.
Yeah.
The second one was Josh Rosen. You know where he went?
USC. I mean UCLA. UCLA, yeah.
The third one was Blake Barnett. He went to Alabama.
And then
Fourth
somewhere
one,
in
Kyler
South
Murray
Florida.
was A&M.
Yeah.
Next one was Brandon Wimbush, Notre Dame. I'm doing this. And then Ricky Town went to USC. And then Brady White went to Arizona State. Those were the quarterbacks in the top 50. So, it's like not what it is now,
Right.
but still.
And Raiola is number one too. He's all right. Let's transition. I want to get back. We'll go back to quarterbacks in a minute, but Jeremiah Smith has been committed to Ohio State. He visited Florida, I believe, Manny, but he had some comments after Dylan Raiola's commitment to Georgia, give him something to think about. So you're on the Jeremiah Smith beat for us, Manny. You're going to actually go watch him play later today if he does play in the scrimmage. Percent chance he signs with Ohio State?
I'm still gonna go with 95%.
Ooh, okay.
Because I think the fact that Ohio State is wide receiver U, and Brian Hartline is still on staff there. If things stay status quo and Ohio State is a playoff team again this year, or they're very near that, I think Jeremiah goes to Ohio State. Plus, he knows Aaron Nolan. They played together 7-on-7 ball, so there's a relationship there. I think a lot of this for Jeremiah is simply enjoying the recruiting process.
And why not?
And why not, right? You're allowed to when you're the number 2 player in the country. I would say it's 95% for Ohio State, not Oklahoma State. That'd be amazing if you went to Oklahoma State.
Hey, getting it done. All right, I think you can appreciate this as a former Ohio resident. I've worked with Bill Landis and
Dollaby is his name.
Yeah, and Teague Robinson about covering Ohio State. So and just following college football. The point being, I had to drive up to Detroit Sunday for my wife's grandmother's funeral, and usually when I drive to Michigan, we drive through Indiana, but because we're going to Detroit, so just cool driving through all these towns that are like, I recognize that town from was it Findlay, Ohio, and
the recruiting, from the recruits,
yes, like going through Dayton and then all the towns around.
You went through Ohio this time?
Yeah, we would go through Louisville, Cincinnati, Dayton, and then up through Findlay, whatever, in Toledo into.
So you never went through the bus though?
No, one time when we drove up to your grandmother's house, one of my best friends growing up was in grad school at Ohio State, so I stopped at Ohio State. Stopped in Columbus.
Did you stop in Bowling Green, Kentucky, at the Corvette gas station?
I stopped I almost ran out of gas. I was really low. There's not much gas between Toledo and Bowling Green, and I was fearful I was going to run out of gas, so I stopped at the gas station. That's right where the Bowling Green football stadium is. It's called
Huck's. It's right outside the Corvette Museum.
Oh, you're talking about Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah,
I was talking about Bowling. We drove also Bowling Green University in Ohio.
Great fish sandwich for a gas station at Bowling Green, Kentucky, Huck's gas station.
Really?
Britt and I went on a road trip when we were dating, and we stopped at the Corvette Museum gas station, and I was like madly in love with her, and I'll never forget that place.
Oh, okay. I've never been by many times. So, all right, let's go with you on Jeremiah Smith. Percent chance he signs at Ohio State. Manny's got 95.
80 probably. I don't know. Like 95's a lot.
Yeah.
As long as somebody's going to take all these visits, like I'm with you. I think I know what you're saying. Like it's probably going to be Ohio State, but like, let them cool the visits a little bit before. Because I mean,
right.
Anytime somebody steps on Georgia's campus, I don't care how much fun they're having on the recruitments. Like they're going to freaking Georgia. So like, I guess it's possible that something could fall out of the bottom there. But like, honestly speaking, like what Manny said, like there's no team in the country that can sell a wide receiver on the testimony of it. That's like, and I was reading somewhere that some scouts think that Marvin Harrison's the best receiver they've ever scouted. So like, it's like not going away this year either. So, I think I'm with you, Manny, but once he cools it with Georgia, then I'll move my percentages up into the 90s.
All right. And this is all related to Dylan Raiola. In a not so shocking development, Daniel Kaelin, Ari's buddy, flipped from Missouri to Nebraska. Ari wrote about him a couple weeks ago in the context that like, hey, Matt Rule, they played this thing the right way. They didn't just quote unquote, settle for Daniel Kaelin. They told Kaelin, an in-state kid, that they were going all in on Raiola. And he's like, fine, I'm going to Missouri. Raiola commits to Georgia. And then imagine that because Matt Rule acted like an adult and was honest, he was able to pivot back to Kaelin, and Kaelin commits. Did you get the impression talking to him, Ari, that he would strongly consider Nebraska? At the time, he was probably all in on Missouri, so it's hard.
No, I mean, it's like also too. It's just like, oh, I know when you're on the phone with a teenager,
Yeah.
it's like you got to be careful because you don't want to offend them or make them feel bad, or insinuate
Why
something.
don't you take that when you're talking to me on the phone?
Because I don't care about your feelings, Mitch. But I asked him like, what if Nebraska gets back into the picture? But you also have to keep in mind too that like, if he flipped in less than a week back to Nebraska, that means that he's probably wanted to go there for quite some time. And like, he's not going to get onto the phone with me and be like, listen, if Nebraska offers, I'm flipping immediately, because the truth of the matter is he probably committed to Mizzou to secure a spot while he waited to see what happened with Raiola. And then when Raiola decided to go to Georgia, he flipped back over. So it's like, we always talk about how tactful Nebraska was in executing this plan of, going after the number one player and, being cordial with the player that you recruited first and, playing it perfectly enough to get him. But what if Kaelin's the mastermind here? What if he's the one that it's like, you know what? Fine, do what you got to do. I still want to go to Nebraska, but I'll commit to another Power 5 school, wait it out. And if Raiola ends up going to Nebraska, then I've got my spot at Mizzou. And if not, then I'll get my spot at Nebraska. And
so
like,
did Eli Drinkwitz make the wrong move here by accepting a commitment from a 24 kid, knowing that Raiola probably wasn't going to go to Nebraska?
I mean, probably not. But like the thing that Kaelin was really big on when I talked to him on the phone was Mizzou treated him like a priority from the beginning. And there is something to be said about going all in on somebody. But the flip side of that is Mizzou didn't have a chance at Raiola. And if they did, they probably would have done the same thing. So like, it's totally understandable why Nebraska would have done what they did. And here's what I wrote in the mailbag. And I think people tend to agree with Manny. I want to know what you think. But, the thing that I thought was interesting about this recruitment wasn't so much who the players they got. It's the level of competency that Matt Rule and his staff showed during a pretty difficult situation to navigate, right? And it's like all we ever saw from Nebraska during the Scott Frost era and before was just dysfunction and handling things wrong and doing the wrong thing. And like I wrote in the mailbag, like I feel like if this happened last year, that Scott Frost would have not gotten Raiola and also would have missed out on Kaelin because he would have fudged the way that they handled it. So to me, the hallmark of this whole situation isn't just Nebraska has their quarterback and boring recruiting headline. It's like, finally, somebody competent is running the show at Nebraska. And if Nebraska is, hit every single day with a strong chess move over and over and over again at a program that recruits at a top 25 clip every year, even in the heart of dysfunction, if you meet those recruiting results with this much functionality, that Nebraska actually has a chance of being good again in the future. And I'm not saying they're going to go win a national championship, but like, it's very easy to buy into the steady competence of Matt Rule meeting the top 25 classes Nebraska has been signing through that incompetence, coming together to make them a really good football team.
Was it the mailbag that I didn't edit?
Yeah, while you were out, whatever you were doing, driving on your road trip.
Yeah, you cheated on me. So, Manny, I would think that kind of hits home maybe for Miami fans a little bit. They've cycled through a lot of coaches, and basically a fan base, all you want is to feel like your coach is competent. And you want to win in a big deal, but you don't want to be like in a position where you're not maximizing your resources, you're not maximizing everything you have to offer. And that's probably how a lot of Miami fans have felt over the last 20 years at times, right?
No, there's no question. And there were a lot of years watching Miami recruit the quarterback position that I can think of, a lot of instances where Miami wasn't prepared to sort of deal with the fallout when they were recruiting quarterbacks. They were really banking on Teddy Bridgewater way back when in 2011 to be their guy. He falls out of the class, and it felt like the whole class sort of fell apart. They never really responded to that and struggled for a bit. So, yeah, I think having the right kind of leadership is uber important. But I also think quarterback is one of those positions where, Ari, you mentioned Matt Rule and handling this the right way in a professional sort of manner. I think quarterback is probably one of the few positions where you can talk to a high school kid and say, hey, you're plan B, and he's not going to get offended, right? Like, I think all of these guys realize there's a pecking order in this. And I'm pretty sure their quarterback, Kaelin, was, how can you be insulted that Nebraska's going after the number one quarterback in the country and they're making him the priority? And as soon as that falls through, he sees an opening and an opportunity. So I think,
well, the thing that's most delicate about it too, Manny, is that even though, like what you said is true, it's also like the most sensitive thing to do, because when you are recruiting quarterbacks, you usually can only go one at a time.
Right.
Like, really, you can't offer. I mean, there are instances of this in college football recruiting where you do have coaches who offer 4 or 5 quarterbacks all at once and say the spot belongs to whoever has the balls to commit first. But for the most part, like when you're recruiting at this level, like Nebraska had zero ability to recruit Kaelin as a committable prospect while they were recruiting Raiola, because they weren't going to take both 100%. Of them. So like they had no choice but to explain that to him. And I'm assuming
you could take two. Georgia has that Ryan Puglisi, probably botching his name, kid from Connecticut, who Audrey might be writing about. Audrey Snyder might be writing about. Like, how does he feel? Like, is he pissed? He's been committed to Georgia for a year. He's climbed the rankings, and they take the number 1 quarterback. I'm sure Georgia doesn't want him to decommit, but if he does, they're like, sorry, dude. So there are cases where a school will take 2 and not try to balance it.
It's a sensitive situation too, because it's like if somebody's already committed before that you are in that scenario, that's not the same thing as being recruited, parallel to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you don't want, then like, I don't know. I've never talked to Raiola or his parents, so I don't know what they're like, but I can understand, as a sign of we're all in on you, like the respectful thing to do if you're Nebraska would be to say, hey, we're not recruiting anybody else at that position, and deciding, you know what, we're going to go get Kaelin after this, or we'll get the Dante Reno kid who, there was some talk about them getting involved with, and we'll worry about that after this. For now, we're all in on you, and like having to accept that. So like, if you ask Daniel Kaelin in an honest moment, he might have the most confidence in his ability and thinks that he has a chance to go to the NFL from Nebraska, but I don't think that he has himself any thoughts that he's a better quarterback prospect right now than Raiola is. Like, they've been to the same camps before. He's seen him up and close and personal. And if somebody says, hey, this is our priority right now, it's no different than if somebody said, hey, Ari, you're not as good as Andy Staples. It's like, I know that, you know what I mean? Like, well, maybe one day I'll be that way, but like, now there's a pecking order of things. So it's just an interesting dynamic with the quarterback position. And at least you have the maturity of this prospect to know, I'm not going to not consider the place I actually want to go to because they didn't think I was better than Dylan Raiola. This is my opportunity to go there, go to the place that I want to go to, work hard, and maybe shine through that. Maybe he'll be better in the next 4 years. You never know how this stuff's going to pan out.
All right, let's continue down the quarterback road here, because there was a lot more.
Hey, Mitch, can I ask Manny something real quick?
Of course you can, Ari. Go ahead, buddy.
Why the hell are the Heat an 8-point underdog tomorrow? Because I'm thinking about putting the deed of my house onto this thing.
Celtics have more talent, but the Heat are a better
team. They did just lose by 17 last night. So I mean, I think Ari, they're playing in Boston. I can see why, and Boston's been favored pretty much the entire series up until Game 4. So
8 points is a lot for a team that by and large has kicked the shit out of the other one for the entire series. But I know what happened last night, but I saw what happened in the first 3 games, and I kind of like the 8 there.
All right, you got big money I'm watching the SEC tournament right now. Texas A&M 4, Arkansas nothing. Hope you didn't have a lot of money on the Hogs.
I haven't made a sports bet in weeks. So.
Oh wow! But
yeah,
real quick, a big. I had just this great cultural experience the other day. I was at the Venables baseball game Sunday against Arkansas, and dude sitting next to me was in town on vacation with 3 other friends. He was a high school teacher in Worcester, Mass. And a baseball umpire, just good dude, like early 30s, liked baseball, like I said, umpire, but didn't really follow college sports. So there's this section of Arkansas fans down the right field line, like 2 sections. And at one break, they start calling the Hogs. And he looks at his buddy. He's like, points to him. He's like, what the hell are those people doing? It was just hilarious. Like, this guy had no idea what these fans could come watch, because the Arkansas fans are calling the Hogs right now. It was just great to see some dude from Massachusetts like just inserted into.
What does it go? It goes woo.
Yeah, woo, Pig Suey. They do it 3 times, and they do Razorbacks. Which the greatest thing is watching like a new coach do it on the podium, like with his wife or something. And it's just the most awkward.
Will you just do it right now on camera for us?
No, I won't.
Take your shirt off and do it.
What does taking my shirt off have to do with anything?
I was trying to think of like what can make it more humiliating for you.
No, I'm not going to do that. But thanks for asking, Ari.
Right.
So another quarterback, Michael Van Buren, number 130 in the 247 composite to Oregon from Baltimore, St. Francis Academy, I believe. Penn State was actively involved. If you remember, the Penn State staff sent him a birthday card where they're all talk about making a fool out of yourself. A lot of the Penn State coaches were singing him happy birthday. So he goes to Oregon, and we'll get into Penn State in a minute. But I know, Manny, you've seen Van Buren throw, and he passed the look test for you, right, Manny?
He did. A very accurate thrower. I watched him and Julian Sayin, who's I guess the number 2 quarterback nationally, who's headed to Alabama. They were trying out for Team Raw down here in South Florida back in January, February, and I watched them throw side by side. Michael's just shorter than Julian. He's got about 2 inches shorter, and so I think that's probably why some teams or some programs are a little apprehensive with him in terms of everybody getting involved on Michael Van Buren. But Oregon pulled the trigger, and I think they got themselves a really good quarterback. He's a very smart kid, plays for a very good program in Maryland, and just to me, I think he's a really good quarterback. He's not the biggest dude, but he can certainly make the plays that he needs to make.
I got a personalized scouting report of this quarterback from the On3's leader, director of scouting, Cody Belair. Do we want me to read any of that, or
sure?
Go for it.
Just figured if we're, this is a recruiting podcast,
like you said,
I'm going to cut off some of it.
You?
He sent it to. This is personalized for just me because he's my boy.
Whoa,
that's nice.
Ari bringing.
I asked him Tuesday. I hope he listens to this. I asked him Tuesday when I was writing my mailbag for a quick breakdown of him to put into the mailbag, to say the On3 scouting director says this about him.
Yeah,
and he sent me back War and Peace, and I appreciate it. But was looking for something about 1/5 the length. But I'll read to you.
Yeah, imagine that
kind of is consistent with
something that's too long and just. I mean, isn't that kind
of
annoying? Ari?
So hard for you to have to edit me every day. I don't know how you break through the bondage and the trap that you've been put into because of this. Okay, he's got a very releases tight, very quick. Love the arm action ability to get the ball up and out with ease. Throws the ball with compact base and everything is aligned throughout the frame. Great coil to uncoil motion. Do you see how different it is? The breakdowns of these. Comfortable in the pocket, steps into throws and can feel pressure with ease. Good escapability from pressure and keeps eyes up, rolling out of the pocket. Arm strength is satisfactory, not ultra explosive or elite, but is very good. But only when he is fully on platform and able to use his entire body. Lacks juice and natural whip when throwing off platform and on the run. Lacks the ability to change up arm angles and throw sufficient velocity and accuracy. Ball trends to float on him with when unable to use his lowers to drive the football. Throws a catchable ball and leads to receivers well. Throws with good anticipation. Has a great sense of timing. Able to layer the football and makes an incredible 6-layer bean dip.
All right, what would yours be? Uncomfortable in the pocket.
Uncomfortable in the pocket.
Doesn't anticipate pressure. No arm strength.
Uncoachable. Also, just needs to have the right coach to bring the best out of him, which I clearly am not getting at the Athletic. So, from an NFL projection standpoint, they think that the best case scenario of him heading into the draft would be Russell Wilson or Baker Mayfield. Worst case is Aaron Murray. 6 foot, lacks ideal height, thicker athletic frame that will carry enough weight, will sit close to 205, 210 at the next level. Is that thorough?
Right. Yeah, it's good job.
You kicked my ass. You kicked my ass.
Yeah, I like.
I didn't. That's not my shit. I just read it. I didn't come up with it.
So in a related note, and this falls under the category of 3-star quarterbacks that we write about that I love and are convinced are going to win the Heisman. Ethan Grunkenmeyer, in-state kid, Ohio kid, going to Penn State, seems to be a really fast rising prospect from about 15 minutes north of Columbus, not recruited by Ohio State at all, was sort of like MAC level.
I wrote a story about how Ohio State missed out at the Elite 11 on Drew Aller because of the circumstances of them recruiting nationally, which opened the door for Penn State to come in and take a top flight quarterback out of their state to be the future of their program. And it's can I just cut and paste that story into WordPress and just change the name and then refile it each year? Because that's probably sold 50 subs too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because this kid is, like I said, some big time schools. Well, Pitt, I think Pitt was one of them. Penn State, Clemson did not offer, but Garrett Riley came up to go watch him throw, which we know what that means for Clemson. It means they're interested and they're flirting with you, and they might have offered.
It's
but
like a peacock when they open up their feathers.
Exactly.
So, when Clemson watches you throw, their feathers open up. Mating call. Yeah.
But the funny thing about this, if you read Audrey Snyder's story, is he grows up in a Penn State, Ohio State family. His mom went to school there. They were in Happy Valley, as you were in 2014, Ari. They were in the upper deck in the Ohio State section in the game that Ohio State lost to Penn State. So Penn State identifies this kid, and he went to the Elite 11 in State College over the weekend, got an invite to the Elite 11 final. So he's ranked 580 right now, but I'm guessing he's going to be a fast riser. There's a lot of similarities to Drew Aller there. He's trained by the same quarterback coach.
I'm going to write the same exact story that Audrey wrote, except from the Elite 11.
Okay.
I'm going to just copy it.
Okay. Copy the story and put your name on it. Okay, good. That's
repackage
fine.
It. Yeah.
Yeah. Different headline. So I'm just fascinated to see how because this is, Penn State's obviously, who knows if they like this kid better than Van Buren, but Van Buren's, they were after him longer, but they pivoted nicely. And here's a kid that, appears to be a good fit. Another Ohio kid like Drew Aller. So see how that,
if Ohio State's going to recruit Aaron Nolan successfully, they are not doing anything wrong by going after that kid, right? So if Penn State sees players in the state of Ohio that play the quarterback position that are better than the players that they're recruiting elsewhere, and as a result of Ohio State's national recruiting strategy, have an in with somebody in the state of Ohio, like everybody kind of wins there, but Penn State gets better. And it's like, what if Drew Aller wins the Heisman this year and Penn State makes the playoff? It's like, was going after whoever they went after, the class that Drew Aller was in from out of state, worth it? Or should they have gone after the guy that was
Devin
in state?
Brown?
I can't remember.
Brown was late. Brown was late to the class, so it wouldn't have been like they chose Brown over Aller, because Aller's a redshirt freshman or sophomore, and Brown's a sophomore. It gets confused. No, that was a Quinn Ewers year, right? Because he reclassified. It gets all.
I think it might have been Quinn. I'm going to find the story right now. All these quarterbacks with the reclassifying and everything bunched together.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, thanks for the transition there, Ari. Last week, Cutter Boley, in-state kid from Kentucky, 140 in the composite, reclassifies and commits to Kentucky. A good get for the Cats. It's not a good year for in-state players. There's no blue chip. There were no blue chippers in Kentucky until Coley reclassified. Ari, would you like to?
It was Quinn Ewers. That's who they were going after.
So again, you can't fault Ohio State. And Aller really was not on the map until late.
This was before Ewers reclassified. Remember, like they spent the entire year with Ewers committed in that class, and then he reclassified and then signed in a different class than Aller, but they were in the same class at one point. So anyway, I just kind of forgot about that because of the reclassification, but go ahead. Yeah.
And so Cutter Boley to Kentucky. Here's an interesting one. Remember, Duke had a commitment from your guy, Hoss Haney, who flipped to TCU. They rebounded. They get Tyler Cherry, number 365. Who knows the ratings? He's rated higher than Haney from Indiana. So nice rebound there by Mike Elko and staff.
Highest ranked QB Duke assigned, by the way.
Yes.
According to 247 composite.
Hasn't signed yet. Yeah, we'll sign.
Right.
Timmy Carpenter, number 668 to Indiana from Dayton, Ohio. And Drake Lindsay to Minnesota from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Arkansas, of course, already has a commitment in its 2024 class. KJ Jackson from Montgomery, Alabama, I believe. So they go down to Fayetteville, Arkansas. So a lot of quarterback movement. We always find this interesting. Georgia Tech, we might get into this a little bit more if we've got time. Jakari Williams, I don't know if you guys have read much about this. Jakari Williams was a 4-star, and Duke Watson, running back 4-star, both decommitted in a 3-day period from Georgia Tech. It looks like it was they actually did part ways mutually. That it might have been from Georgia Tech side. If there's Georgia Tech fans listening and you know more about it, please tweet at us, because 2 days later, I believe they get a quarterback commitment from Aaron File from Bogart, Georgia, who's not rated. I think he's in the thousands, but they obviously like him. So I don't know if you guys have read more on that. I tried to dig a little bit and couldn't figure out. It just seemed like a strange deal with Georgia Tech losing 2 4-stars in the same week, one of them being a quarterback.
Yeah, I reached out to Williams through Twitter. He didn't respond to me because I wanted to find out, was he flipping to another school? Anytime you have a 4-star commitment decommit, usually they've got somewhere to land, but it doesn't look like he's got a ton of options. In fact, I was looking at who he sort of announced as far as other offers, and it's not a very deep and extensive list. I think FAU was one of the schools that he was looking at, and I'm trying to see if I find it here. I had it in my notes. James Madison was the other. So, yeah, like you said, it could have been a mutual sort of parting of the ways. But he's the second highest ranked available quarterback, uncommitted quarterback in the 247 Sports composite behind Elijah Brown. So, interesting name out there to follow.
All right, Ari, it's time. You went up to Norman, Oklahoma. You've written 2 stories from your visit. Little background. Brent Venables kind of took with him to Oklahoma the Clemson no visit policy, which Clemson, if you're committed to Clemson, you're committed to Clemson, and you're not allowed to take visits elsewhere. If you do, they will not consider you a committed player, and that's fine with them. Just time to move on, and that's just the way they do it. You've been critical of that. You wrote a column about Brent Venables last spring that elicited a lot of responses from Oklahoma fans. And you went up there a couple weeks ago, you talked to him and wrote a column about it, and you see where Venables is coming from. So I want you to talk about that. And did you just sort of agree with it because he makes a lot of sense and it works for them? And my second part of my question, if you're the head coach at Arizona, your beloved alma mater, would you have a no visit policy?
Yeah. Okay. So when I wrote the column last year, I just thought it was nonsense because my thought was, if you are the head coach of a football program, that it is your job to deal with the grab ass drama in recruiting because it's part of the job description. But 2, by doing this, you're only hurting yourself out of being stubborn because you're going to push away more players out of your class than you will retain ultimately while they go on their visits. It's like, imagine if Ohio State right now, because we were just talking about Jeremiah Smith, we're just like, you know what? Forget your drama. We don't want you anymore. Bye. That would stink for Ohio State because they still have a really good chance to get him. And he's one of the best receiver prospects in the country. Ohio State would be voluntarily moving on from somebody that good. So to me, that is still the case with Oklahoma. The thing that changed my mind, and I hope that it came through in the column, isn't that I think that, it's a better practice for keeping players than I thought. It's Brent Venables understanding and being willing to acknowledge that he probably ends up losing more players than keeping them with this policy and that he's fine with it. So really, I still don't know that I would have a no visit policy because personally speaking, I don't think that it's fair to accept or to expect 17-year-old people to be fully developed final products of themselves and to not want to take other visits or not be mature enough to handle the things that I think it's part of a head coach's job to help them go from dramatic teenager in the recruiting process to front of the line team first player in college. That said, I can respect what he's doing because that's how he wants to build his program. And it's up to him to gamble and decide whether or not that's going to work. So he changed my perspective of why he does it. I still don't know that it's the best thing to do in terms of keeping the best possible class signed, but his philosophy is that he'd rather have a lower rated class of kids who are committed from the beginning rather than a higher rated class filled with a bunch of dramatic grab ass. You know what I mean?
And he's signed the number 4 class in the country. It's not like his class was 13 or something.
Right.
4 class, and he held on to him after going, 6 and 7 or whatever they did.
And part of the thing that I had a hard time with is that they signed the number 4 overall class in the country, and it's bolstered by Peyton Bowen, the 5-star prospect who couldn't have been more dramatic.
No drama.
Yeah. So the thing that's always going to be hard for me when it comes to these policies is that whether or not Brent wants to admit it, the
first name basis
players who are in the top 5 nationally or the 5-star players are going to live by a separate set of rules than everyone else. And it's like, if you think 100% of the people who have drama in your recruiting bring drama to the locker room, then you're saying that there's a 100% chance that Peyton Bowen's going to be dramatic on your team. And I don't know that that's fair to say, nor do I think that it's not his job to fix it if he is. So this is a long-winded way of saying that he didn't change my mind in the sense that I think that the no visit policy is the way to go. And if I were a head coach somewhere else, whether it was a big time program or not, I probably would not do that. But he did change my mind because on him doing it being the right thing for him, because that's how he feels. That's how he wants to run his program. And he's convinced that doing it this way in the long term will lead to less people wanting to transfer out, more stability within the program, and players who are more 10 toes fully bought in. So as the head coach of his program, I can't call him short-sighted or somebody who's doing something poorly when he has a well thought out answer for every criticism that you could possibly have, and it's his program to do with what he wants. And I hope that's what came through, Mitch.
Yes, it did. There's one.
Not that I changed my mind about the whole policy. I just changed my mind of the perspective of it.
Right. One thing you said where his answer, he didn't really answer. He went on something else, but that's fine. Manny, what say you about the policy and the way he explained it in the story?
I mean, I enjoyed the article. I think broaching the subject is cool because I think a lot of college coaches try to enforce this rule. I know Manny Diaz tried to do it while he was at Miami. Whenever kids committed, he didn't want them taking visits elsewhere, and he would always sort of phrase it as, if you start looking, we're looking. But I think to Ari's point, it's only enforceable with guys that can't really go anywhere else, that they don't have. It's all based on options, right? If somebody's coming after, if Clemson or Alabama or Ohio State is coming after somebody who's committed to Oklahoma, there's nothing he can really do about it, right? If those kids secretly take visits behind his back and end up on campus on those other places, ultimately there's nothing Venables can do about it. And in the end, he's going to take those kids if he can get them. So to me, it's a nice thought. It's a nice philosophy to have because you want all of your kids bought in. But I just think the practicality of it and never really being able to enforce it, it just depends on ultimately who has the power. And if it's
what happens if Jackson Arnold wants to go visit somewhere else? That's the question.
Right.
If that happens, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I don't think you pull the scholarship. I don't think he does because he needs Jackson Arnold. I mean, it's all based on.
And if he doesn't pull the scholarship, then the rule isn't real, and it's a stupid conversation. Yeah,
right. But that stuff you can always keep in house and never make public. You can always say, well, we didn't know he went on the trip, right? We can always say he did it behind our back without us knowing. There's so many ways in today's spin zone era. I agree with you, Ari. I mean, I think in the end, look, it's silly. It's silly to have a policy like this because in the end, you're gonna break your own rule, right? Like it's inevitable. You're gonna end up with a really good player or want a really good player who's gonna want to take visits, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. It's just the way college football is.
Yeah. That's kind of what I agree with. So I'm very curious because I will be tracking. Was there a defensive end that visited Texas last year a few times despite his commitment to Oklahoma and still wound up at Oklahoma? Like I don't think I'm done revisiting this. I'm going to track it.
Ooh, is that a threat?
No, it's just I find it really fascinating, and people are really into this. Like I thought it would just be I didn't go to Oklahoma thinking that this was going to be the thing. We just talked about it for 5 or 10 minutes in his office, and it turned out to perform better than the column/major story that I went there to write. So people are really into this. So
it's an interesting topic because we can all.
I mean,
there's a lot of things we can't relate about what these coaches go through. And I mean, I don't know if we can relate, but we understand the process, and it's just, we all have our own thoughts on it. And it's just,
the one last thing I'll say too is that it's impossible to manage your roster. So if you want to do it, because the only way that who's coming in and who's going and what your numbers are going to be is by actually having spots accounted for on a real commitment basis. That's different than doing it because you think everyone's dramatic who wants to visit somewhere else. So that's also another thing of I understand why a coach wants to have his numbers on an Excel sheet and easily followable. You don't want to not be sure if somebody's actually quote unquote committed, but there are reasons why a coach would want to do this just for the ease of, making his roster whole on a given, year by year basis.
Ari, I think we got to get our team together, our whole college football team, and actually ask as many coaches as possible. Have you ever pulled a scholarship from somebody because they took a visit elsewhere? I'd love to know that answer.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, Ari, if you're going to be a head coach, you got to learn how to use a spreadsheet and open a Google Doc. So we gotta work on that.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that Notre Dame had a decommitment today?
Yes.
Do you know what his name is, Manny?
I don't, but I saw that he decommitted. He's an edge rusher, right? An edge rusher.
Ari, do you know what his name is? We've discussed him on this podcast in the past, and we
Yes,
made
I know who it is.
We made a joke about what are we going to say when he decommits.
He'd be yeah.
I've got to look it up now.
He waffled.
Yes, his name is Owen Waffle.
Oh, yes.
I mean, when
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
That's how I pronounce it. Wafle. If your name's Owen Waffle, you got to commit and be sure about it so you don't decommit later. I mean, this is just.
Should we call him and write about that? Like, you're going to go to Michigan now, but you waffled, right?
Yeah. From the Hun School in Princeton. So
you gotta have some hair on your chest to be the person that takes Owen Waffle's first commitment.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman took it.
He could go to Oklahoma on principle, right? I mean, just
I just followed him on Twitter. I'm gonna try to talk to him about this. Do you think he'd be like, "Why are you calling me with this shit?" Or do you think he would go with it?
I'm sure it's not the first time. Like, I can't tell you how many times when I introduce myself to someone, they make a dumb joke about, "Hey, Bud Light, Miller Lite." It's like, thanks, jackass.
Really?
I've never heard that before. Oh yeah, I mean, it happens at least 20 times a year.
Wow.
I would think like more like the illumination of a room.
No,
I wouldn't think of like light beer.
Yeah, light beer. My wife's first grade class, they're the Bright Lights. That's more like it. That's the name of her class. So,
you are kind of like a light beer, though.
Is that a compliment or not?
It's like you're still a beer, but you could be better.
What are you?
I'm a full beer. I'm an
IPA.
IPA.
Full-bodied beer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's run down a couple. We'll get to trivia in a minute. I know Ari's got to head out to the airport to pick up his lovely wife. Where was she?
Vegas.
Business or pleasure?
Business.
Oh, sure. Just like when you go to Vegas.
I hope only business. I only hope. I hope there was no pleasure. Yeah.
When you go to Vegas, it's all business, right?
Yeah. I mean, the last time I went to Vegas, it was all business, but I had a lot of pleasure there.
Yeah. All right, we won't go into we'll do this later in the summer, or maybe we'll do this after June. We'll dive in, and Antonio Morales writes about this. He'll probably do it in August, but time to worry. Still early in the process, but recruiting starts earlier than ever. We got the June visits coming up, which we're going to be writing a lot about. But North Carolina, class is number 14 overall, but only one of 13 commits is a blue chipper. Average player rating of 87.04. Ari, dare we say that Mac Brown has been kicked out of the cool kids table? Like, he was there for a while. He was cool, and now he's trying to sit there.
The thing I want to know is, like, I want to, before, I mean, I guess you could kick him out of the cool kids table, but I want to know, I'm assuming that North Carolina as a state has just been drier the last 2 years.
It was last
when he
year.
showed up.
It was last year. But, hey, Jaden Davis is a 5-star quarterback, and I don't think they were ever in the mix for him.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. It's like, I mean, there was going to be a point in time where it's like either this is going to work or it's not going to work. And I think this might be Mac Brown's last year of like either this is going to work or it's not.
Got a great quarterback, yeah.
So
so fair to say, would you guys agree? Like, at this point, it's still the amount of commits doesn't really worry me for most schools. It's the teams that have been recruiting at a high level. It's the blue chip. If you got 14 and you have 13 3-stars. And now I know ratings can change and all this, but that would be the concern for me. Manny, what are your thoughts on Carolina? Too early?
No, I think there is reason to worry because, first of all, the best players in the state aren't going to Carolina. A lot of them are going to Notre Dame. I think I was looking at their June visitor list. They've only got 4 blue chip recruits scheduled so far for June. None of them are top 100 type players. So I think as far as like, are they still at the cool kids table? No, I'd say between losing Phil Longo and Dre Bly off that staff, I think they were having a lot of success in Virginia, right? Going in there and recruiting out of Virginia. I think this is going to be one of those classes that when we look at things like average player rating, it's not going to be very good.
Yeah. All right. Ari, guess what happened since our last pod? Miami got a few more 3-stars. You excited?
Yeah, Manny, did they like do that? Did they stagger them on purpose so they could show off?
They're staggering them just for you, Ari.
Yeah, so Miami's number 25 overall. Only one of 8.
Is there a reason to worry about Miami? I would say yes if you compare it to last year's class, but they're going to have a bunch of really good players on campus in June. 11 top 100 players in terms of visitors.
How many do they have to get to be successful? 4?
They had 16 blue chippers last year. So let's say they get 4 top 100 players and get to like 13 blue chippers. That's probably a top 12 class, right? So
it's so boring.
I know.
I'm sorry, Manny. You know what it takes. That's not it. You know
that's not why
it's
they didn't hire Mario.
They didn't hire him for that.
To get that. So yeah, but I would say that's one where it's still early because, as Manny has written about and just said, they got a lot of kids coming on campus. Here's one that I would be concerned, and it is a program that is all we talk about, or what we talk about a lot, is geography and access to players. And I don't care that this program's been at the G5 level; it has not recruited nearly as well as it should. Houston has one commit so far, a 3-star. Ari, are we concerned about Houston?
It is kind of funny that like everyone's like, well, they're in the Big 12 now, so they're gonna go gangbusters. It's like, well, that's not really happening yet. But yeah, I don't know. We always do this like, are you worried or not worried in May? And it's just like, a team could rattle off 7 commitments in a 10-day period, and it's like, it's fine. Like it happens all the time. So I'm not worried, but like what I say is I'm genuinely worried about Houston's output over the last decade.
Right.
In consideration of like where they were located or are located and where they're going, they should be a team that like I don't know, all things the same. Like, shouldn't Houston sign better classes than Baylor, TCU, and everybody else now if all the money is the same?
I think it's going to take a few years of momentum of Big 12.
Yeah, but like eventually, don't you think that the path should lead to Houston signing better classes every year than TCU, Baylor, and Texas Tech?
I think Baylor and Texas Tech, yes.
Maybe not TCU.
Maybe not TCU.
Yeah,
the
but like
ironic
Houston
thing here is
in the Big 12. So like, how could they get out recruited by some team in Lubbock?
Right, and they have not recruited well over the past 10 years relative to their talent. But the interesting thing is they have the highest ranked player ever to go to a G5 school, and Ed Oliver. They had a good run there. So
who hit and went to the NFL too on top of it.
Yeah. So Manny, what are obviously you're a South Florida guy, but it's similar. It's a recruiting hotbed. I wouldn't compare FAU to them or anything like that, but it's a program with tradition. They were in the big in the Southwest Conference for a while. Cause for concern. I think Holgorsen, there's not a lot of momentum right there. They lost a lot of key guys to transfer.
Yeah, I think Houston's just one of those unique situations where the best players in Texas are still going to go to the top Power 5 teams, and they're not. I don't think there's a lot of kids that grow up in the Houston area wanting to play for the Cougars. It's kind of like your fallback plan. If I don't go to Texas or I don't go to play for Texas A&M, I'll go play for Houston. And I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon. We haven't studied like what their normal recruiting patterns are. I don't know if this time last year they only had 1 or 2 commitments, but I'm guessing they're third in the pecking order in the state of Texas at best, behind Texas and Texas A&M when it comes to being able to get who they want. And so, yeah, I think while you can expect them to do better now in the Big 12, we still really don't know what's going to happen once Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC. How much that affects recruiting in Texas, right? And how many kids end up going to SEC schools now because they want to be in the best conference. So I think it'll be fascinating to watch, but I'm not necessarily panicked because Houston always has good players. They always find somebody. So to me right now, 1 commitment for Houston first year in the Big 12, not a big deal. If this was 10 years from now and that was still the case, probably. But it's still very early.
All right, well, we'll dive into this a little bit more over the summer, and like we just said, it's really not fair to do until after June now with all these programs having so many visits. So, you guys ready for a little trivia?
Yes, I have to leave. Hurry.
I know. Well, you have 4 minutes. Okay,
you're wasting time.
Am I? What if I talk really slowly? Is that wasting time?
Go in 3 minutes. So.
All right. There are 9 quarterbacks among the list of the top 50 prospects since 2000 at 247sports.com. So name the top 9 quarterbacks of the modern recruiting era.
Terrell Pryor.
What number is he? You got it. That's 1, but what number do you think he is?
Would he be 3 or 4?
Pryor is 6.
The 6th highest rated in order?
He's number 6. Why don't I not have Quinn Ewers on this list? I'm an idiot.
He's number 1.
Yeah.
This is going well.
Wait, Ari,
Arch
wait,
Manning
was that,
should be on there.
Ari, what is that? You have to leave? Oh, I guess we'll do trivia next
I
week.
guess we'll just do trivia next week if you don't have the right answer.
Well, no,
But like it should be like 3.
well, who would be on it?
Vince
Manning?
Young should be on here
No,
too,
Vince
right?
Young, yeah, no. Obviously, I started from the wrong year. So I don't have Manning or Ewers. So those are probably the only 2 recent ones that should be on the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, any recent ones that were 1.00 should all be tied for first.
Well, Ewers is not. He fell off because there's only 5 perfect guys. So, okay, aside from Manning and Ewers, just rattle off some names. You got Terrell Pryor.
Dylan Raiola should be on there?
He hasn't signed yet. I didn't include him because he hasn't.
Oh, he didn't sign.
And like his evaluation's not done. He's
Was Chris Leak from Florida? I remember him being an elite guy.
Yeah, I don't think he's he's not on it.
Trevor Lawrence?
You mentioned Vince Young, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Vince
Young, Trevor Lawrence
2,
Justin Fields
3.
You said since the beginning of the
2000
era, right?
Since 2000. One of them is a kid who played at 2 Florida schools, Manny.
Oh, that's a good one. It's Florida and Miami's quarterback, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember his name now.
Brock Berlin.
Brock Berlin, right.
Oh,
Many years ago.
Okay, 4 more. One of them
Bryce Young.
Correct. Number 6.
How many more do we have left?
3.
We said Quinn, and he wasn't on there. Shea Patterson, is he on there?
No.
Andrew Luck.
What do you mean? What's the criteria? I'm confused.
Just the top 10 rated quarterbacks.
Oh, because like Shea Patterson was the 3rd overall player in his class, so I don't know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, the top 10 high. 247 is the list when you click on
all-time recruits
in order.
Andrew Luck.
Nope.
So he's not, even though he was 3rd in his class.
He didn't make the
I
top
get
50.
you now.
Yeah.
I get you now.
Basically can't miss quarterbacks.
Well,
there's 2
one of these
there's
missed.
2 that Matt Barkley's on there, right?
Yes, Matt Barkley, good job. And
then who's the
7?
other blonde kid that went to Notre Dame? What's his? You know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Isn't he from California too?
Yes. His brother.
What the hell's that guy's name? You know, like the bleached hair with
his brother
Jimmy
played
Clausen.
in Tennessee. Yes, Jimmy Clausen, and the last one also played in the Pac-12 and in the NFL.
Mark Sanchez.
Yes.
Very good.
Good job, Ari.
Ari kicked ass.
Britt thinks he's very attractive.
Oh, yeah. Seems like a nice guy.
Well, there were so many. I thought Shea Patterson was like the
So I think I phrased it the right way, but then I got flustered when I realized that you
were missing some guys.
Yeah, I don't know how I screwed that one up.
And like the fact that like Caleb Williams isn't on there is insane to me. But that's
might be like 10th or 11th or 12th.
Yeah.
So
okay.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Stars Matter. We will catch you next week.